Hello, and welcome to the Jumpstart Podcast with Jeffalytics. I'm your host, Jeff Sauer. Today, for our 61st episode, I wanted to talk to you about a touchy subject, and a subject that I don't know if I have an answer to. It's about when you know you should trust your instincts, when you should seek out more data, and then the role of years of experience in this whole thing. Now, you can't see it, but I'm doing air quotes as I say years of experience because it's one of those most commonly misrepresented concepts in the world of marketing. Now, that statement itself is crazy. I'm saying that years are a misrepresentation, as if 365 trots around the sun is something to debate. I'm not debating what a year is. I'm not one of those flat earth truthers or anything like that, but years of experience does not mean much of anything to me. At least it hasn't for much of my career. Now, more on this when we get to our top 10 list of data points. But before I get to the list, I wanted to share some updates on my end since we last talked. I'm still in Portugal, I'm still loving it, and I've been working very hard these past few weeks. We are in the selection process for our next team member at Jeffalytics. That's going to be our copywriting apprentice. And the applications have been of such high quality that the decision is going to be a tough one for me. In addition to that, I've been batch recording several podcast interviews and preparing them for the months into the future when travel is going to take over and scheduling is going to become very difficult for me. Now, the good news is that this is the furthest along we've been with podcast content that I can remember, so process is winning in this case. And finally, because I have a wild speaking and travel patch coming up in October and November, I'm also developing a website for our newest product, getting all the materials together and just overall taking advantage of my isolation in Portugal while I can. Now, by the time I leave here, I should have enough materials in place to travel October and November stress-free. Knock on wood, of course. It's this last topic that has me thinking a lot lately, and that is the decision I have made to launch a new product, to develop a new website, and to go all in on a concept that I've been floating around for the past 6 months. Now, what made me go all in? And how much data did I need to make that decision? How much did my past experience kick in? Let's talk about it. Here are some thoughts on data versus instincts when it comes to your business, as well as the impact of years of experience versus gut intuition. So let's get to our 10 speaking points about data over instinct and then instinct over years of experience. Number 1, years of experience means almost nothing. Let's start with an observation from some upcoming podcast interviews with entrepreneurs. While I was batching up podcast episodes, at least 2 of the interviews talked about their drive for starting their own business. Part of the drive went something like this, and I'm paraphrasing. They said, I felt like I was accumulating years of experience, but I kept on having the same 2 years of experience over and over again. I wasn't growing at a level that I felt that I was capable. So basically, deja vu, Groundhog Day, over and over again, trying to do the same old stuff. But then once they jumped out on their own, they said they experienced more in the first 6 months of entrepreneurship than at least 2 years at almost any job they've had before. You see, not all experiences are the same. For example, when I teach at the university, and I know that some of my students at the university listen to this, or former students, so hopefully I'm not burning any bridges or making you upset. But one of the first things we do is we introduce ourselves, share our experiences, and I'm the one who starts, because obviously I'm the person in front. So I go through my spiel where I say, somehow I'm here teaching you marketing, and I've never taken a marketing course in my life. And it's sort of funny that I'm here, right? And many of the people in the audience, they're already quite experienced. They have 10 years of marketing here, 25 years there. And they're probably wondering, how does this baby-faced computer science graduate, how are they leading a course about marketing when they've only been out of school for a little bit over a decade? And yes, I just called myself Babyface. And yes, I will sing a song by Babyface to the first person who leaves me a review on iTunes calling me a baby-faced podcast host. Get to work, everybody. Okay, back to the story. Many people in the audience probably think to themselves, what the did I just sign up for? This millennial doesn't know jack shit. And then I open my mouth, I share my experience, I demonstrate knowledge, I get the wheels turning, and by the end of that class, I'm often the highest rated teacher in the whole department. There's been times where I've been told I was the highest rated instructor adjunct they've ever had in the entire department. Babyface my ass. Number 2, there's a lot of value in being around for a long time if you embrace it. What's old is new again. Now, it's funny, when Facebook came up, people thought it was all the rage, and I said, isn't this just like AOL Instant Messenger? It's like a new version of AOL Instant Messenger. Absolutely. Twitter, that came around. I was like, isn't this just basically like an anonymous message board? LinkedIn, I was like, isn't this the same thing as being on some kind of listserv Ponzi scheme for business? These things weren't that different. They were just new versions of the old. Now, a lot of people get scared by technology, thinking that this is all going to be so different and things that are there. But you're at an advantage when you've been around the block enough times because nothing is really that new. What's old is new again. And so there is value in being around for a long time, but you got to start retraining your brain and rethinking and saying, oh, this is like that, but it's not that. And making sure that you understand the difference between one system and another, and then using that as a way to frame up the problem you're trying to solve. And that goes along with number 3. Everyone is so fixated on having up-to-date information. Now, I get a lot of questions that come in through my courses, and a lot of the skeptics, they'll say something like, hey, I've noticed this was produced in 2015. Is this out of date? Is this going to have the most up-to-date knowledge? Am I going to be missing out if I take this video about how to do strategy and how to make money and have a strong ROI on advertising? If you don't mention this thing, my life is going to be ruined. I'm going to be wasting money. And it bothers me that people would have this limited point of view because tactics change daily. These tactics are changing all the time. And in fact, no, I don't have every single tactic, every single thing people are doing in place right now. But what I do have is I have strategy. I tell you the strategy behind why you need to do these things. And that lasts a lot longer than that. It doesn't really matter what's on the screen. We're talking about strategies. We're talking about questioning the principles people put out there, common knowledge, questioning the rhetoric of Google, making sure that you're doing what represents your business the best way. And that's never going to change. But the thing is, people are so focused on the tactics and everything, and they think that's what they're learning. And maybe that's just a fault of me for what I'm teaching. But basically, it's hard to teach a tactician to be strategic. It has to be earned. And that actually does only come with years of experience. So it's the inexperienced person who thinks that everything needs to be up to date or instant or instantaneous. It's the people who have been around a while who don't really give a crap. They want the result. The result is that you have a strategy now that you can apply to not just your business, but basically any kind of advertising that you put out there for your business or for your clients, whoever it is. So strategies are transcendent. And honestly, if I re-record the video, I'm just changing 2 words. I'm saying that the Google ad guideline, instead of having this many characters, it has that many characters. Who gives a crap? The point is how to get a positive return on investment. Number 4, the years of experience you have and the number of cycles you've gone through enhance your instincts. Now, I've said the number of years of experience is a bad measure, but I will say that the number of cycles you can survive is an incredible measure for you. But you can get your cycles in and be young. I had more cycles by the time I was 24 years old than a lot of people have by the time they're 50. I had more exposure to more things. I had more uncertainty. I had jumped out on my own. I had started being an entrepreneur. I was completely self-sufficient by that point in time. I had a lot more time because of the trial and error. So the number of years doesn't mean anything. It's the number of cycles you've gone through. But if you do the same thing for the number of years you have, I don't consider it a badge of honor. To an entrepreneur, it's almost a sign of weakness. Going through cycles, evolving, learning, that is about as sexy as it gets to an entrepreneur. It's how many times have you gone through and come to a conclusion and done things right, done things wrong. That's really what defines you. That's the badge of honor. Number 5, instincts alone are completely biased. When you go through enough cycles, you start to think that your instincts are infallible. But I believe this can be dangerous. Your instincts are completely the result of selection bias. Your instincts are your experiences. More is better, but even then, they're extremely limited. It's like a singular hair follicle on the head of the world. So relying on your instincts when they're unchecked is going to lead you nowhere. You need an outside voice. You need to learn from other people's cycles. You need to get as much knowledge as you can in order to make a decision. Number 6, always bring in advisors. The best advisors are there to provide you with a perspective. They're not there to tell you what to do. They're there to share stories of what they did or what they might do in a situation. Now, I read something recently that said something along that nature, and it really got me thinking. Part of why my students gravitate towards me as a teacher is because I almost never tell them what to do. I told them what I did, what I might do differently, and what went wrong with the scenario, or what went right. And then they can make their own decisions. And a few students, probably 5% of them, they absolutely hate my style of teaching for that exact reason. They want answers. They want a guide to tell them exactly what to do, and they wanted them yesterday. They want me to refund their course, and they just don't like me at all because I'm not telling them the blueprint. Here's the exact thing that you need to do. But then what they end up doing is they float from one thing to another, and they're always blaming somebody else for their lack of success. Nobody can tell you exactly what you need to do to be successful, but they can teach you how they became successful, and you can become successful by being associated with successful people. Now, it's easy for me to focus on the vocal 5% who don't give a but it's smart to focus on the 95% that you do reach. And I think we talked about this in a previous podcast, because those 5% are probably having the same 1 year of experience over and over again, if they even make it that far. Number 7, advice plus context. Be sure to bring advisors into your world. I've had many advisors in my years. Some are formal. Most of them are informal, though. I tell them what I'm thinking, bounce ideas off them, and then I listen to what they have to say. And 90% of the time, the advice makes a lot of sense. It makes sense for a business to do these things. But it doesn't always make sense for my business to do it. The advice isn't always practical. The advisor has no accountability for getting the work done. So their 5 minutes of advice turns into 6 months of grueling work with no guarantee that it's going to work. Now, the role of the entrepreneur is to take the advice of the willing and to mold it around their business. 90% of that advice will be valid, but maybe only 25% of that's going to be practical. And at most, 10% of it is going to see its way into action. But that 10% can change everything. Number 8, knowing when to act. Some things about my business have been disappointing in 2017, frankly. Fortunately, I have a strong network around me that can help with it. So that disappointment, some of it hit while I was visiting my parents in Florida. Now, my dad has always been my top advisor. With nearly every decision I make, it's based on having watched him become an entrepreneur for the first time when I was 12 years old, living in the same house, seeing it all happen. I always ask him what to do, and he doesn't tell me exactly what I need to do. He just sort of gives me a framework to make a decision. So when I told my dad about my struggles, he gave me some suggestions. It took him maybe 5 minutes to hear the problem and to offer pretty much a definitive solution. But holy was that solution intimidating. It was easy for him to suggest, but it would have me working around the clock for 6 months or more. The truth is that it's easy for somebody to dispense advice, especially when you share the same bloodline. But it's the duty of the entrepreneur to decide whether you want to act on that advice. Number 9, instincts plus data. Continuing from point 8, much of the advice dispensed by my father matched my own instinctual thinking, but it represented a departure from how I had built and marketed the product. So to implement it would mean a damage to my integrity, a damage to my pride, and it would be a huge risk still. Here we had 2 hair follicles in violent agreement on how things should come together, but would the whole head be on board with that plan? Continuing with our hair analogy. The only way to know is to ask them. So to pull together data, to test an idea without committing, instead of pouring 6 months of work into an idea that was liked by 2 people who shared the same home together for 18 years, some outside data is also needed. And if you've been listening along lately, you can probably understand how I gathered that data. Number 10, process the data, assemble the opinions, think about it every day for a few months, drink a few shots of tequila, and commit. There's never a right answer in business. There's never enough data, never enough resources. The odds are always stacked against you. While other businesses serving as competition is a reality, I think that first and foremost, a business is competing against indifference. Indifference from the world at large, from the markets, from consumers. A business is not supposed to survive. If it were easy to survive, everybody would be doing it. So when it comes time to make a tough decision, the entrepreneur must draw from every single resource that they have available. They need to borrow from every cycle, remember every conversation, draw from every case study, connect every dot, and then they need to take a complete leap of faith, hoping that they made the right decision. So when you wonder what I've been doing over the past 2 weeks, that's what I've been doing. And that's what I've been doing the 2 weeks before that, and the 6 months before that, and the 3 years before that. A friend wrote to me the other day saying, "You're lacking a North Star in your business." And yes, I know what you're thinking, some friend that is. And naturally I was pissed. Like I'm pissed pretty much every other time that I get negative feedback. I talk about that on the podcast a lot. But now I wear it as a badge of honor. Now it's my guiding light. My North Star is surviving, It's cutting through the indifference. It's living to see another day. And that star is burning bright.